Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to the last in our first series of Ask Mongoose Anything sessions. I am so thrilled today to have Jay Bookout. You're gonna be thrilled too once you hear from Jay and understand how he got here, what he brings here, what he brings to our clients, what he brings to our prospects, what he brings to students in general. A lot. I'm hyping you up, Jay. I hope you're ready to fulfill that.
I appreciate that, Laura. I need it. I need a little hype.
I don't think you bring the hype. I don't think you need it, but I'm here to help with that. All right. So as Jay mentioned, I'm Laura. I am going to be the facilitator of this conversation today, and it is meant to be a conversation. So if you have any questions on the topic of anything, and Jay did this to himself and to me, so I'm like an unwilling participant, but I asked him what topic he wanted to cover, and he said, Laura, it's an Ask Me Anything. And I said, okay, let's do this then. So any questions that you have, please do drop those into the Q&A. You should be, Melanie will help me to check the setup there to make sure that we are all set with making sure we can get those Q's and A's into our panel there. And then we can also take them through chat if you'd like to drop a question in the chat, a comment, anything you want to say. Jay and I are here to listen to it for the next 27 minutes. So I have a couple of questions that I have heard when people have been speaking to you, Jay, in meetings that I've been on or with other sessions that we've been preparing. And so I'll start with those, but I will give precedence to anything that comes into the chat while we're speaking. But first, let's go ahead and talk about your background, where you came from, why Mongoose, what's so different about Mongoose. Can you just give us an overview of who is Jay Bookout and why should we care?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a cold morning in December 1982. You don't want me to go that far back where I came from. Got it. Okay. So I started my career actually in higher education admissions. I started as an enrollment counselor for a small private institution. Quickly found a knack for communicating the value of education as a first-gen college student to other students, and worked my way into an associate director role, eventually a director of admissions, and then landed a job on the other side of the desk with an ed tech firm. Worked there for about a decade, and then moved over via acquisition to another firm for another 3.5 years, and then landed here at Mongoose with all the tenure of about 5 months and 13 days. I thoroughly enjoyed my time as an admissions officer, but really found my passion in aligning my counselors and my advisors with their strengths and their personalities and their skill sets with incoming possible students and prospects, to see what we could do to increase our efficacy and our success rates. And that's where I kind of found my pure passion, which is data analytics and the ability to make small nuanced changes and measure outcomes and see, are we doing better, are we doing worse, and should we do this again?
You made me think of one of my favorite jokes that I've heard recently. And it was, someone was like, tell me your story. Where'd you come from? And they started, I don't even know who this was. So you might know, and then you can tell me and I can cite it like a good information user. But they said, I was born young. I'm like, it's so funny. That is really.
That is funny.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right.
You're welcome.
Okay, all right. So we do have a couple of questions coming in for you, Jay. So most of them are about data. So I think that we'll probably end up focusing this session on data, on ROI, on actually quantitatively assessing the impact of your student engagement, and then using that to drive action, using that to create more connections. So the first question for you is, okay, a peer at another institution mentioned you'd shown her some competitive intel that would be useful for engaging prospects, so prospective students. Can you share more about this?
Okay.
Can you?
Yes. Let me think. That was in relation to so all right, in admissions, as we all know, there will be students who are brand ambassadors for your institution. Maybe their parents went there. Maybe they have worn your school colors every day of their life since they were born, even those that were born young, Laura. And maybe they're just a huge fan of your athletics team, whatever it is, but they are 100% coming to your institution without fail. Then there are students that don't know about you at all. And those are the students that you might try to get in front of with purchasing a list buy or marketing efforts, or trying to gain the attention of a student that had no idea that they were a fit for you and you were a fit for them. And then there are students that are on the fence. So you're one of the schools they're thinking about, but you're not the only school that they're thinking about. And so in this instance, one of the many benefits of Mongoose and the operations therein that have had a great expansion effort since 2016 is we have about 950-ish distinct university logos, schools that work with our platform. And so we're able to really articulate what that overlap is for that third population that we just mentioned. So for a student who is engaging in your admissions funnel, they are very likely engaging with the admissions funnel of 3 to 4 other institutions. And so the way that we articulate that is we look at, okay, in your incoming class with your students who have submitted an application, how many other organizations or institutions are they also actively communicating with? And so it kind of really builds out a very real-time student engagement and student behavior mind map, which I don't think that our industry, our higher education industry, has ever had. On the other side of that is also student retention, right? So students who are currently enrolled, right, that are attending classes, if and when those students start engaging with another institution's admissions office, it's something that we could look at. We can say, okay, we've got a group of students for one reason or another. Maybe they're athletic transfers. Maybe they're, pick your reasoning. Maybe they've been relocated or their family's being relocated. But all that to say, we'd be able to see, okay, well, what are the indicators that a student is possibly at risk of stopping out? So the competitive intelligence, it goes so much further than just sending messages and bidirectional communications and capturing it in your CRM and your SS and LMS and all that good stuff. It's bringing about actionable insights that help us all do our jobs better. As I mentioned earlier, like first in college student, very, very passionate about our industry and very, very passionate about education being one of the very few things in this life that can change a human from inside out. So we should all do our best to make sure we're operating in excellence where.
I love it. Good answer. Okay, so I did have a question come in from, I think it's from actually Mongoose's marketing team, and they were wondering what hex codes you use to set your lights.
So these are not hex codes. I actually tune them by RGB, so I have a hex converter because our brand standards, though they are extremely well done, don't include CMYK codes, which is helpful. But they're also programmed to my calendar so that no one interrupts while I'm presenting. So we'll see if that works.
Okay, let's see. We might have a special guest coming in, and thank you, Mark, for submitting that question. Problem. It was me. Okay. All right. Real questions coming in. Sorry, had to take a little detour from a brand integrity perspective. Okay. So this one, our guest here said, I keep seeing insights or data analytics from Mongoose. What does that mean?
That could mean, it could mean whatever you want it to mean, right? So it's almost back to what I said a moment ago. It's, I think all too often, business partners like ourselves who partner with institutions define success for organizations as like, you're doing well because X, Y, and Z. And I think that's an unfortunate miss of the mark, where we should be coming in early on to understand, well, what is success? And success should be it should be as fluid as our ability to adapt to change and to overcome or do better with our next try. So analytics are just, it's just the visualization and or the elucidation of a preferred outcome and seeing whether or not it's a true or a false. And so as you see insights and analytics from Mongoose, it's more than just how many messages were sent and how many students replied. It's what were the sentiment of those incoming replies. Were students pleased with the message they received, or did we unfortunately and inadvertently create dissonance? I think that's where I've kind of just really wrapped my head around the amount of data and the amount of potential that Mongoose has, based on, like I said, the partnerships that we have, and the depth and the breadth of the collated student conversation data that we've had for coming up on a decade.
Great. And thank you. Keep these questions coming. We have some questions building off of what you've been hitting on, Jay. So one of them is, speaking of data, do you have a favorite data point that showcases a school is being successful with texting or with chat? I'll add as well.
Yeah. Oh, so chat and text. If I'm doing the combo, the 1-2, there is nothing, again, this is going to be my admissions junkie coming out in me. There's nothing more exciting than a unique first-time site visitor interacting with your chatbot, whether it's an after-hours conversation, or it's a conversation that they interact with one of our chatbots and end up transferring to a live chat with an available team member. But whatever it is, it was their first entrance into your funnel. And then it's even more exciting to see when that conversation moves from just chatting to then texting, from texting to then talking, from talking to transmitting transcripts and enrolling in your funnel. But I would say, like, if I had one specific key performance indicator or statistic or data point that I would call my favorite, it's called the hard opt-out rate. One of the things that I mentioned a moment ago is just being a good steward of the messaging that you're putting forward. And we can measure that pretty effectively by the amount of students that raise their hand and say, hey, I'd prefer to no longer receive messages from you. And so making sure that we reverse engineer every single message that ends up triggering one of those responses, I think is a moral imperative. So much so because Mongoose is integrated with your CRM and your communication platforms. And so if a student is opting out, that is basically the cessation of a bidirectional communication, and we don't want that. So what we love to see is an opt-out rate that's significantly small. If we do have any opt-outs, we want to analyze those and figure out what was the point of disconnect. And then we want to try to A/B test or do a little bit better and earn the right to have that conversation continue. So that's probably I wouldn't call it my favorite, but it's the one I'm most maniacally focused on. To compare it to something for the folks that may be less intimately aware of our software and operations, it's like the check engine light in your car.
Great. So we have a couple of questions coming out of a couple of actually even terms that you just used. We're drilling down into you as a glossary for us, Jay. So one of them is Mongoose reached out to me about our partnership, because I know you mentioned partnership earlier, Jay. What does that mean? We just use you for texting.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, for someone who just uses us for texting, wow. Okay, I could go a few different ways with that one. I would say I probably wouldn't say that would be a perfect partnership. Okay. Partnerships, I'm gonna quote a good friend of mine, partnerships are when partnerships dissolve, there's grief there, right? There is a longing and a missing, and it's something that, like, oh, I wish that would have never happened. If you just choose another vendor to send text messages on your behalf or to use within like an internal platform, that's a vendor. That's someone just providing a product. And vendors are somebody who throw peanuts at ball games. Partners are the ones that sit down with you kneecap to kneecap or virtually elbow to elbow and have a conversation about how your strategic goals are their priorities too. And so I treat every partner as if that partnership is assumed, sometimes to my own detriment, especially if I have a habit of, when I join a call, I use the royal we, and I always try to put a small caveat by saying, like, I just joined your team, by the way, out there. But when I'm having a conversation with somebody that utilizes our product, services, platforms, and technologies, I literally envision myself as being a part of their team, and I think that's what a partnership is. So to define it.
Okay, so this is related. Speaking of being a part of the royal we, ROI is a challenge for this person who's listening in, especially when it comes to the investments that they make into technology on their campus. Can you help?
Can I help with ROI?
Yeah, yeah. And
Yes, I certainly can. It is an acronym. It stands for return on investment.
check.
That's good then. We're good.
Feel free in the chat if you want to provide some more clarifying details around that question. But I take it to mean, Jay, if we're talking about vendors, if we're talking about partnerships, if we're talking about what can possibly be expected from ed tech partners, especially because you come from a couple of different companies, is help with proving that it makes sense to invest in.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. Yes. Assuming that's the bent of the conversation, I would say this. Again, being someone who's come from admissions, I know what it takes to build a funnel. I know what it takes to build a lead pipeline that's going to generate a certain amount of applications that will meet some specific admission requirements, that will go post melt and show up to class. That is not only laborious, both with physical time and emotion, but it's also a cost center that is rarely profitable. And that's because it takes so very long for a student to A, go through that process, B, for it to be done successfully, and C, to get in front of those three audiences that I mentioned a moment ago. You've got your students that are dyed-in-the-wool fans of the brand. You've got your students who had no clue they were supposed to be on your campus. And then you've got the ones that are thinking about 3 other places. And so to generate that amount of following, it costs marketing dollars. And Laura, you know this, you're a marketing professional. And by the way, one of the best I've ever worked with. So kudos to you and your team. But that should also be taken into consideration, because return on investment is not just, I paid $500 for this widget. This widget produced $750 of return. It's so much further down the funnel than that. And so it is, I paid $100,000 to this list by this name aggregator. Of that, it produced 85 enrolled students. Of those 85 enrolled students, 75% of them were in conversation with my admissions team via Mongoose Cadence, right? Or they came to our website and our chatbot, or X, Y, and Z. Well, you can take the 25% that didn't interact and you can compare their journeys. And so from a return on investment, it can be twofold. It can be, well, 75% of those students came through an interaction or a touch point with our solution. So that could be a return, but that's causational, that's correlational, and from a statistical standpoint, it wouldn't hold up in court, as they say. But for the 25%, to look at their journey and to see, well, what are the empirical differences? So, like, do students who receive texts earlier in their academic journey to matriculation, do they fare better when it comes to deposit rates or admit rates or lower melt rates? Or do they travel further from home if they're an out-of-state student or a migratory student or a commuter? All of those things are what we're analyzing. And so I would just say this to the person who asked the question, assuming I'm in the same vein of its intent, is expand your criteria for defining return, and absolutely expand what you're calling an investment. So if an investment is just what you paid, and you only look at us as the people who text for you, that's pretty simple. Like, you can go find somebody who texts more expensive or less expensive or X, Y, and Z. But being able to compare, how am I doing against my top 20 competitors, or how am I doing with my engineering students who are a part of an underrepresented or underserved community. Like, those are the things that I want to be much more clear on when we talk about return. So I also don't want to assume what you would consider a successful tick box of putting that into the return category. So it's it's part of a partnership. ROI is what would you call the investment that you've put forward to build this class, or to retain this class, or to gather a certain amount of donors in your advancement office, or complete FAFSAs in your financial aid office, or submit transcripts to the bursar, whatever it is, whatever your operational capacity and part is in the institution, whatever your passion is, let's reverse engineer what that investment is, all the way back to what it took to turn the lights on this morning.
And you already kind of hit on this, Jay, but I do want to bring it up so that you can add some more color to it, because it is a question that comes up often when we're having conversations with current clients or prospective clients, or just generally talking about text messaging specifically. And that's not all that we do, obviously, but when we're talking about texting, something that I know our client success team hears often is what just came in the chat, which is, I already have texting in my CRM. Do I still need Mongoose?
Okay. Oh, wow. So I make it a personal mission to try to be as objective as possible in all things. I try to avoid the words no, and I try to avoid the word or. Oars are for rowing boats, not making decisions. Nothing worthwhile operates in a binary or a dualism. And so when somebody says, hey, I have Salesforce, or I have Slate, or I have X, Y, and Z, I have texting functionality in that. Do I need that or Mongoose? I like the and. The and is what makes sense to me. So with a bidirectional communication and integration, there would be no reason to not have both of them operating successfully. One, yes, it's great that a lot of these technologies have that functionality naturally existing. However, what is its level of sophistication from a comparative when it comes to Mongoose? Secondly, specific to admissions offices, so forgive me again being the admissions guy, once that student progresses through and starts classes, they don't stay in your CRM, they move to your SIS or your ERP. And so if that does not have that same communication methodology or medium, that student's really gotten used to that. And that's something that, we saw that with email really way back when I had hair. It was if a student was in their LMS, or they were on the portal, or they were doing whatever else, and those communication A frequencies, B tone, and C like functionalities did not have parity to their experience in the admissions office, it was noticeable. And so I just don't think that it's an or conversation, Laura, and to whomever posed the question, I think it's an and conversation. The other thing, I mentioned this a moment ago from the competitive intelligence, and just for fun, I'll show you like a visualization of what that could look like a singular CRM would not have the ability to tell you that competitive intelligence, right? And I guess on a webinar, I won't be able to screen share because I'm not the host. But what I'm suggesting is to say, like, if you only have your data, your comparative is just yourself, right? So that's where the and comes into play, and calculating the value or the ROI of actionable insights that help you, number one, grow your funnel, two, retain your students, and three, see those students graduate and become alumni and hopefully a part of your foundations. I don't think you get that with an or. I think you get that with an and.
And that's something that I have found to be really beneficial here specifically, because I have also worked at a couple of different ed tech firms, also a first generation college student. Lots of similarities here, Jay. We should chat. We should get to know each other. Yeah. Also born young. You were too.
I've been an old man most of my life. Yeah, those who know me well would say the same.
Okay, all right, fine. We don't have that commonality, but I really appreciate the fact that we have this wealth of knowledge, so that, yes, we're kind of trying to be general right now because we have more than one person on the call listening in. And so we're answering these questions with some generalities, but we are so happy to have a conversation about your specific tech stack, your specific definition of success at every stage of the student life cycle. And then also just we like to take that consultative approach to making sure that student engagement looks right for your institution, because we are not throwing peanuts. Do people throw peanuts? Throwing popcorn, throwing peanuts, lots of things thrown around.
You should not ever throw popcorn. A bag of peanuts, not a
Okay.
single peanut.
I think we should refrain from throwing anything, but we're not that vendor that's throwing things. We are a partner. And so I just want to emphasize that. And Ria has dropped into the chat as well, that opportunity for us to talk about more specifically what's happening on your campus. And it's okay if you're not a current client with us as well. We're happy to chat about this. We're passionate about it. We're passionate about talking about making sure that technology is working to create economic and social mobility for students of all backgrounds. And so I do want to throw that out there. Jay, you should be able to show your screen now if you want to. I'm just going to say this is not marketing approved, and so he's going off the rails here. That's the small text. Is it
that is the definition of anything. That's the definition. I was going to show a visualization that discussed the difference between, we have the capability in-house with a single product versus the ability to do it large scale. Case in point would be being able to visualize, okay, well, how many distinct competitors are communicating with my student population within my funnel, and how many of those are with my admits or my enrolls or X, Y, and Z, and what do those communications look like across my funnel? And these are, different organizations. We would never say so and so X, Y, and Z school. But for us to come in and to provide that analyses and say, look, we looked across your top 5 competitors that are talking with your students who are on your wait list, or who gained admission but have not deposited or committed or X, Y, and Z. We're not going to say you should be talking to that student because they're considering otherschool.com or whatever. What we will say is we've done a sentiment analysis on all of the messages that you've sent the student and the student has sent you. We did the same sentiment analysis on the incoming and outgoing messages to those groups of competitors. Here are the key differentiators, both of success and of point of dissonance, that you should be employing. So it's about guiding your strategy with best practices, because at the end of the day, not a vendor who throws hot dogs, peanuts, or whatever. We're not throwing anything. We're providing an opportunity for a student to change their life. And if you're not putting your best foot forward, you're not living in your sweet spot. And so I think that's what Mongoose is attempting to do. We're attempting to bring something different to the industry that's not just sending text. We are aiming to make every single thing, person, place, or time, just a little bit better than how we found it.
I love it. I would end there, but there was a question that came in one of our previous Ask Me Anything I really liked, and so I'm going to do that. You can only choose one, Jay. What's your favorite emoji?
My favorite emoji? The bug eyes.
You heard it here first, everybody. He was born old and he likes bug eye emojis.
Yeah.
Making me and Ria crack up. Those are the only 2 people who are laughing. Okay, thank you. We're going to end now because we want to be respectful of your time. Thank you, Jay, for joining us. Thank you, everybody who piped in, who asked questions. If we didn't get to your question, I saw that there was some chatter about sentiment analysis. That's definitely a topic of interest to this audience. And so we'll make sure that we follow up so we can get you some more information and also the recording. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Jay, for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for the invitation.